Looking across this beautiful pasture, you'd never know that there is something out there that worries the daylights out of this landowner and this tree farmer and this scientist. But there is. An invasive weed with no known value and no natural enemies has invaded our state and is rapidly making its way northward and could soon be a problem for every person in Mississippi.
I woke up this morning, I looked out in my field. What I saw out there, it made me want to squeal. Them little white flowers, they was blowing everywhere. It's enough to make a man pull out all his hair. I got the Cogongrass blues. Lord knows I got the Cogongrass blues.
This harmless-looking weed is Cogongrass, also known as Jap grass. Other cultivars are known as Japanese bloodgrass and red barren.
Well, Cogongrass came into the United States in 1912 in Mobile Bay as a packing material in Satsuma oranges. Initially it was accidentally, but in the 1920s they used it in some of the southern states as a potential forage crop and found out pretty quick that it wasn't any count for that because of the high silica content in the leaves. In 1979, Cogongrass was documented in 19 counties in the southern part of the state, and today it's been documented in 50 counties all the way across the state. And that spread is from day to day, it's increasing. They're finding it in more and more counties.
Cogongrass has been designated by several publications as the 7th worst weed in the world. This grassy weed spreads by seed and also by producing numerous underground stems called rhizomes.
It'll produce 3,000 seeds per plant. Real light, fluffy, can blow up to 15 miles. This can be transported by wildlife, getting caught on their fur. And it also produces asexually through producing rhizomes. Now it takes 4 weeks from the time a mature seed germinates until it starts producing rhizomes. And then in a good condition, good soil, good moisture regime, it can spread up to 43 square feet in 11 weeks from the time it germinates. So in other words, in 15 weeks you can have a 43 square foot infestation. Now you put that across the landscape where you have a lot of these little 43 square foot infestations. It doesn't take very long for an exponential spread to occur and your whole landscape will be covered in Cogongrass.
In addition to these ways of spreading, Cogongrass can also be spread by road maintenance and earth-moving equipment.
If the equipment that is used is not clean before it's transported to another location, there's a potential spread. Land managers do the same thing on their own properties. If they go from food plot to food plot and have Cogongrass in one and move to another one without cleaning that equipment, the potential for spread is there. The loggers do the same thing. If they drag tops through Cogongrass patches, there's potential of spreading it there. Same thing with fire plows is another avenue of spread. Forestry Commission comes in, have to run through Cogongrass with their fire plows, load up, go to another fire, there's potential to spread. So contaminated equipment is one main avenue for the spread of Cogongrass. You compound this with the natural rate of spread, with a high rate of seed volume and rhizomes, and you've got a bomb waiting to happen.
Once Cogongrass establishes itself, it creates numerous problems in many different areas. Forest managers and tree farmers are particularly at risk.
This particular stand is a real good example of that. About 4 years ago, before they thinned this stand, there was virtually no Cogongrass in the understory. They came in and did a commercial thin. It has opened up the canopy. There's sunlight hitting the ground. It has allowed this Cogongrass to really spread. And as you can see, there's a major infestation in the understory of this pine stand. It's going to hamper the productivity of this stand, not only on the economical standpoint, but a wildlife standpoint as well.
Cogongrass has been present in South Mississippi for years, and until recently, it's been virtually ignored by landowners. These landowners did not know what it was and were not aware of the massive problems it causes until the last few years.
Well, the problems it's causing, even at the present time, I guess the expense of fighting it is just enormous. We had to fight it. It had to be fought. It was literally starting to smother out certain areas of the forest. No natural vegetation at all. It even killed yopons and wax myrtles and things like that. And just it was totally changing the characteristics of the forest where it established, and it just had to be fought. In the areas where we were attempting to plant trees, old pastures where we were converting them to longleafs, it was necessary to fight it because nothing would, you couldn't grow anything, you couldn't plant anything, no seedling would grow in it, the root mass was just so thick.
Where we're standing right now was in soybeans 21 years ago. The market went south and we were floundering. The CRP program became available, planted this and slash and loblolly pine timber. And until we thinned it, which was about 5 years ago, I did not notice much Cogongrass. But once we thinned it and the spores spread, I've had Cogongrass sprouting up everywhere.
Davy Casey runs a Christmas tree farm in George County. Weeds and Cogongrass compete with his seedlings, stunting their growth and taking money out of his pocket.
You can see right here, these trees is 4 years old, and when I planted these trees, I had just a little bit of japgrass in here. If you can see down the middles where I've been able to bush hog it, I've kind of controlled it. But up under the trees where you can't get to it, you can see down through the japgrass, it's going to choke everything else out. And then it makes your trees, see like this tree, I don't even know if it'll be worth selling, but this will be a pretty tree in next year. But that grass makes them thin up on the bottom, makes them lose their inner needles. And I guess that's the biggest problem as a Christmas tree farmer is, you know, it don't kill a tree, it just makes it where you can't make it a pretty tree for a Christmas tree. Makes it thin on the bottom.
Cogongrass also has a negative impact on wildlife.
As far as forage value, there's none of the seeds are consumed by any of the birds or whatever. They're too small. There are a few butterfly larvae that will feed on Cogongrass, but very few. And it's so thick that there's no way that a turkey poult or a quail chick can navigate on the ground in this stuff. And they don't like nesting in it. They definitely can't forage in it. Think of a quail chick that's about this tall. There's no way that he can get around in this stuff. Plus the fact, since there's no insects that feed on it to speak of, there's no food value for them. Quail chicks and turkey poults need to have a high protein content the first few weeks of their life.
The gopher tortoise is another species that is highly impacted by the spread of Cogongrass. These slow-moving animals can't navigate in the thick stands of grass and either have to move their burrow or starve to death.
All right, what we have here is a gopher tortoise burrow, and this gopher has been here for, I know, at least 12 years, and up till now he's pretty much been able to forage out here in the food plot. We're providing tender vegetation all, but as you can see, what's happened here over the last couple of years, the Cogongrass now is extending out into the food plot. So basically, the gopher is pretty much entrapped with Cogongrass right here, and as you can see, he's got to move quite a ways to even find anything to feed on. So what we're afraid is going to happen, and most likely is this gopher is going to abandon this hole, and he's going to move probably out into the food plot out here further and take up a new residence. And we're not allowed to disc within 25 feet of these burrows, so basically what will probably happen when he moves out there, we can't disc within a 25-foot radius there. We won't be able to disc within 25-foot radius of this abandoned burrow. So what's happening there, when that happens, we're losing food plots again because of the gopher tortoise, because the Cogongrass is impacting our food source here.
All of these problems can be severe, but by far the biggest threat concerning Cogongrass is when it catches on fire. Due to its high vegetative density and biomass, burning Cogongrass can reach temperatures of nearly 850 degrees at heights of up to 5 feet and spread very quickly. This usually kills trees and surrounding vegetation. Firefighter Randy Merritt knows all too well the dangers of burning Cogongrass. A homeowner near this field was burning a trash pile on a dry, windy day. He stepped away for a few minutes, and when he returned, the fire had gotten out of hand, and he called for help.
By the time I arrived on the scene, it was 40 to 50 acres had already burned by that time in less than an hour with the wind that we had blowing that day and the type of fuel, this Cogongrass. So it is very hot, very intense. We have trouble with it jumping the fire breaks a lot. Matter of fact, we had a crew come behind us after we went in and plowed fire breaks behind us where it had jumped over our lines and started back up again. So it's very hard to put it out. It's puts out a real intense heat, and it's very volatile when it's burning, very fast. And it does not take long for it to spread. It'll spread with no wind about 4 times faster than a fire in any other type of fuel.
Merritt and his crew fought the fire for over 6 hours trying to contain it and save surrounding houses.
I hate fighting fire in it. I can tell you that for a fact. I'd rather do anything or fight fire in any other kind of fuel. And I've been on some of the worst ones we've ever had, and if it's got Cogongrass in it, it just intensifies it about 4 times worse than what it would be otherwise. And it don't take no wind in it to make it intense like it does in the other type of fuel. So Cogongrass is a real hazard. It's not only a hazard to the farmer, it's a hazard to a timber grower, it's a hazard to a person that just owns a piece of land, really and truly.
Now that the history and problems of Cogongrass have been touched on, how do you know if you have this pest on your property? Weed scientist Dr. John Bird can answer that.
One of the most important features to use to identify Cogongrass is the fact that this grass blooms in the spring. Now, a lot of people are familiar with the cool season grasses like fescue and ryegrass that bloom in the spring, but those plants grow during the winter. Cogongrass is a plant that grows during the summer, but unlike any of our other warm season grasses, with the exception of zoysia, which some people may have in a lawn or see on a golf course, Cogongrass blooms immediately after it turns green for summer growth. And there are no other warm season grasses, with the exception of zoysia, that possess this characteristic. And so that's one of the key things to use to identify it. Now you see the plants in this particular location are in the very earliest phases of bloom. The seed heads have just emerged. The plant's putting out its anthers. It'll pollinate, and then as the seeds mature, the plant develops this fluffy seed head characteristic. Those seeds are mature now and are ready for the wind to move them, just like a dandelion seed, to a new location for new populations to become established. Another one of the features that I think is important for identification purposes is the rhizome system. Now, it's important to become familiar with these rhizomes, and Cogongrass is not the only perennial grass that occurs in Mississippi that has a rhizome system. A lot of people, for example, are familiar with Johnson grass and Bermuda grass, but the rhizome system on this plant is far more extensive, and there are more of them than on these other grasses. Fairly uniform shaped internodes. Each one of these little circular bands here is called a node, and each one of those is capable of producing roots and a new plant above ground. Now, the rhizome is also important from a control standpoint. If you remember that over 60% of the plant biomass is in roots and rhizomes, and this is the part of the plant that we've got to kill to completely eradicate populations. When you pull a new rhizome up, oftentimes you'll notice it has a brown sheath around it. That's called a scaly rhizome. Can be easily peeled back with your finger to reveal a nice, healthy, white, fleshy rhizome that's capable of producing quite a few new plants. Now, one feature that some people may have read or heard is that this midrib, this white vein that runs up the center of each leaf is offset on Cogongrass, and that can be used as an identification feature. And it is true that the midrib is offset on Cogongrass, but there are other grasses that also occur in Mississippi that possess this characteristic, and I would discourage viewers from using that as a sole identifying feature.
So once you've identified Cogongrass that needs to be eradicated, how do you go about it?
Currently, the two herbicides that are best used on Cogongrass consist of glyphosates or imazapyr. Glyphosates being the Roundup type products, imazapyr being your Arsenal type products, Arsenal or Chopper. Recommended rates vary from 2% to 3% glyphosate products, or 1 to 1.5% solutions of Arsenal products. Foliar application. Over here where you see this pine tree, you can safely use Arsenal around that tree, and you're not going to take out the pine tree. It's not going to hurt it, and it's going to hammer your Cogongrass. I prefer a mixture of 1.5% solution of Roundup with a 0.5 to 1% solution of Arsenal mixed together with a good surfactant, and utilize it on these stands, and we get some synergism or synergistic response. It works real well. But if you use the Arsenal Roundup mix here, you have no problem. But if you use it behind me here, underneath these cherries and these water oaks, you're going to take these hardwoods out. So in a situation like this, you're going to have to switch your tactics, use Arsenal Roundup mix or Arsenal underneath these pine trees, and use straight Roundup underneath these hardwoods. It's going to take more applications, 2 or 3 applications. You're going to have to be persistent, but over a period of time, you're going to be able to take it out. But if you use Arsenal whatsoever, you're going to take your hardwoods out. The more that you can do to Cogongrass, the more effective you're going to be in control. In an ag situation or a pasture situation where you can go in and disc that ground, you will put an additional stress on that plant. Deep disking will knock back Cogongrass, and continued deep disking is really going to hamper it. But if you walk away from this field, it's just going to come back. But if you can mow it or burn it, come back in and disc it, let it sprout back up and apply your herbicide, you're going to be more effective on eradicating that in that field than you will be with just one application or one technique alone. Anytime that you're dealing with Cogongrass, you're going to have to be very vigilant about going back and checking to see how much good you did with your herbicide applications and what you missed. This particular field this area has been sprayed 3 times with Roundup, and as you can see, we still have spots coming back. Now this particular spot that I'm standing in, I actually used some Arsenal on it and was able to pretty much eradicate it in this area. But as you can see, that we've missed a few spots. So you're going to have to be very vigilant, come back and spot trade it as necessary. And it may be over the next 2 or 3 years. You're not going to get it with one application. You're going to have to go back and check it. When you go back and do spot treatments, spray 6 to 8 feet beyond the Cogongrass to make sure that you get any shoots or tillering that's moving out from it. Spray that. I have sprayed stands of Cogongrass where I just sprayed what I could see and came back the following spring, and I literally had a donut. So you need to spray beyond so that you can get good, efficient control of that plant.
Mississippians should be acquainted with another weed that got out of control.
This is a familiar sight to many Mississippians, kudzu along the roadsides. Kudzu has become a major weed problem. It was initially planted for erosion control but escaped along the highways and rights-of-ways and now threatens forested areas in the state of Mississippi. Cogongrass is very similar to kudzu several years ago in that it is a non-native invasive weed that has not reached the level of importance that kudzu has so far. However, it has the potential to spread in the state and be as bad a problem or a worse problem than kudzu.
Well, in 1948, a man by the name of Pendleton wrote a statement saying we need to eradicate this noxious weed from the Western Hemisphere. Now we're into the 21st century and we're behind the curve. So it's time to take our blinders off and get busy working on Cogongrass. Fortunately, we've got a lot of groundwork that's really taking place through the Bureau of Plant Industry and Department of Agriculture and Commerce are taking the lead on this. But landowners and land managers and utility rights-of-ways, they have got to start being very aggressive with Cogongrass. The only way we're going to get Cogongrass under control is actually getting mad at it and staying with it and working on it on a day-to-day basis and week-to-week or year-to-year. One-time application is not going to take care of it. We're going to have to be very vigilant about getting rid of Cogongrass.
While I was driving around this morning, I looked out in your field. What I saw out there, it ought to make you want to squeal. That lush green Cogongrass